Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We got some really interesting articles this time around about a recent Bundesliga match.
Oh, yeah.
Mainz beat Borussia Dortmund
Interesting.
3-1.
Mm.
And on paper, it's an upset. But let's take a deep dive into the tactics and see if Mainz's win was really a surprise or something more.
This is a great selection of sources.
Yeah.
We've got not just the match report, but some really in-depth analysis that I
Yeah.
think we can definitely uncover what happened.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
One thing that really jumped out at me at first was how much these articles highlight Mainz's tactical discipline.
Okay.
And they especially focus on that 4-2-3-1 formation. What do you think about that?
Yeah, the 4-2-3-1, a classic, but Mainz didn't just park the bus.
Right.
They really used it well. Their double pivot in midfield was really key, I think.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, that's two defensive midfielders working together, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they really disrupted Dortmund's flow in the middle.
So it wasn't just about absorbing pressure. They were dictating where Dortmund could play.
Yes, exactly. It's about choking those passing lanes, especially in the center where Dortmund loves to build.
And that freed up Mainz to do what they do best, right? Those quick transitions.
Precisely. Stifling that build-up play from Dortmund, that created the perfect scenario for those Mainz counterattacks.
And with Dortmund's high line, there's so much space behind.
Acres of space.
Yeah. The articles were all about Lee Jae-sung and how effective he was for Mainz, not just with a goal, but just driving those transitions forward.
Oh, Lee was everywhere. He was such a threat going forward, but his work rate, winning the ball back, was so important to start those counters. I mean, he was the engine of those transitions.
Yeah, and then, of course, the turning point.
Yeah.
The red card for Emre. How much did that change the momentum?
Massively. I mean, Dortmund came in wanting to dominate possession, with their 4-3-3, but Mainz was already stifling that.
Right.
And then the red card forced Dortmund to switch to a 4-4-1, which is so much more conservative, and it just opened them up even more to those counters.
Yeah, it sounds like even before the red card, Dortmund wasn't their usual dominant self.
Yeah.
Was there anything in the articles that hinted at this before the match even started?
So one of the articles talked about Dortmund's history on the road.
Yeah.
They've had some issues with discipline, committing some rash challenges, which can lead to red cards.
Right.
Plus, their high line can be a little bit risky.
Especially against a team that presses effectively.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this isn't just a one-off. They've struggled to impose themselves away from home before.
And then to top it off, Mainz's first goal wasn't just some random counterattack.
Yeah.
It was really well constructed, and it highlighted those defensive problems that Dortmund has.
Totally. They overloaded Dortmund's right side, which opened up that space for Lee Jae-sung to cut inside.
And what a finish.
Beautiful goal.
Yeah, so even when Dortmund had all 11 players, Mainz was finding ways to exploit those weaknesses.
For sure. It's not like they were just absorbing pressure and hoping for the best. They had a plan.
Yeah.
And they executed it really well.
Yeah, and you see that in the other two goals.
Right.
That second goal.
Quick transition after winning the ball back in midfield just shows how effective their pressing was.
And the third.
Another counterattack masterclass, Dortmund pushed forward, trying to get back into the game, and Mainz just pounced.
Yeah, Jonathan Burkhardt finishing off that swift counter.
Yeah, each goal really exposed a different defensive problem that Dortmund had.
So it wasn't luck. It was tactical discipline.
Yeah.
And clinical counterattacking and just an ability to punish those Dortmund mistakes.
Absolutely. This was a tactical triumph. They had a game plan, they used Dortmund's weaknesses against them, and they capitalized on the opportunities that were presented.
And we can't forget about the coaches.
The gaffers. Oh, yeah.
All the articles talk about Bo Svensson and his tactical genius.
He had his team so well prepared,
Right.
but also his in-game management was spot on.
Yeah.
Kept the pressure on Dortmund with his substitutions.
They never really recovered after going down to 10 men.
Nope.
Okay, so we focused a lot on Mainz. Let's flip the script a bit
Okay.
and look at Dortmund and why they couldn't play their usual game.
Let's do it.
These articles have some interesting perspectives on that.
Great.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Buckle up, everybody.
We're going to take a deep dive into Dortmund's woes.
Let's start with that midfield battle.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were talking about that midfield battle. Mainz's double pivot completely shut down Dortmund's usual dominance.
Right.
They really targeted Jude Bellingham, who usually is the deep-lying playmaker in that 4-3-3.
Yeah.
By crowding him, they prevented him from setting the tempo, and it just threw off Dortmund's whole attacking rhythm.
So is Dortmund too reliant on Bellingham? Have they become predictable?
That's a great question. One of the articles actually suggests that Dortmund's system with the single pivot makes them vulnerable to a good double pivot. They haven't really shown much flexibility.
It's like everyone knows the playbook.
Yeah.
And they just won't change it up.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the midfield. The articles also highlighted some issues in Dortmund's defense.
Yeah.
Especially those center backs, Hummels and Süle.
Yeah, they've both been so good for Dortmund in the past.
They have.
What happened against Mainz?
Well, Mainz's attackers, especially Burkhardt and Lee, they were constantly moving, swapping positions.
Yeah.
It was really hard for Hummels and Süle to keep track of them.
Yeah.
They were caught out of position so many times.
And that's what led to those gaps that Mainz exploited.
Exactly. A combination of Mainz's clever movement and Dortmund just being too static.
And then on top of all that, Dortmund's high defensive line.
Right. It can be so effective.
Yeah, when it works.
Yeah, it suffocates the other team.
Yeah.
But it requires such incredible coordination.
Yeah. And communication.
Especially from those center backs.
Yeah. And when it doesn't work.
Disaster. It's a recipe for disaster.
Right.
A quick counter or a well-timed through ball can just expose those center backs.
And that's what Mainz did.
Over and over again.
Yeah, those match reports are full of examples of Mainz just cutting right through.
Yeah, their pace and their movement just overwhelmed Dortmund.
Yeah, it really seemed like speed and precision were on Mainz's side.
They were. But the articles also point out some critical mistakes from Dortmund.
Okay.
Especially after that red card.
Right.
Their passing got sloppy. Their decision-making was rushed. They just seemed to panic under pressure.
Like they were rattled by going down a man.
Yeah, maybe they just couldn't regain their composure. You know, Dortmund are known for their attacking flair, that fluidity.
Yeah.
But when they had to defend deeper and play more reactively, they lost control.
So some people are saying that Dortmund would benefit from having a more adaptable formation. You know, maybe even trying to double pivot themselves.
Interesting.
What do you think?
I think it's worth considering. You know, it's not about giving up their attacking style.
Right.
It's about having more options.
Yeah, having more tools in the toolbox.
Exactly. A double pivot could give them more stability in the midfield.
Especially against those teams that press high.
Exactly. And it could help them control the tempo better, even when they're not dominating possession.
So are you saying Dortmund needs to be less predictable? Less reliant on that single pivot?
I think having more flexibility would definitely make them less predictable and tougher to counter.
Yeah.
They need to be able to change their game plan.
Based on the opponent.
Yeah, based on who they're playing and the situation in the game.
It's crazy how this one match exposed so many of Dortmund's weaknesses.
Right.
You know, maybe they wouldn't have been so obvious if they hadn't played such a well-drilled team.
Yeah, a tactically smart team like Mainz.
Yeah.
I think this is a reminder that any team can be vulnerable if you find their weakness.
Yeah.
And for Dortmund, I think this was a really valuable learning experience.
So where do we go from here?
Good question.
What are the key takeaways for both teams and for our listener?
Let's break it down. For Dortmund, it's about being more flexible tactically and fixing those defensive problems, especially on the road.
Yeah.
For Mainz, this win proves that their approach works.
Right.
It shows that their coach knows what he's doing. Yeah. But this is important for you listening. It's not just about tactics on the pitch.
What do you mean?
This match shows how important adaptability is and preparation and seizing those opportunities, whether it's in football or in business or even your personal life.
Yeah. Being
able to adapt to change and execute your plan can make all the difference.
I love that we went from a Bundesliga match to life lessons.
That's the beauty of a deep dive.
Right.
You go beyond the surface and find these connections.
Okay, so we've talked about the tactics.
Yeah.
But what about the mental side of things?
Yeah.
How do you think this win will affect Mainz going forward?
That's a great point. Something people don't always think about.
Right.
This could be huge for their confidence.
Yeah.
It proves they can beat the best.
Yeah.
And that belief is powerful.
It is.
They might start taking more risks, playing with more freedom.
Right.
Who knows? Maybe they'll challenge for a European spot.
Wow.
Yeah.
And for Dortmund?
It might be humbling.
Yeah.
But hopefully it's a wake-up call. It forces them to face those weaknesses head on.
Make those changes.
They have the talent and the resources to bounce back.
Yeah.
But it's going to take honesty and self-reflection.
And a willingness to adapt.
Exactly.
So that leads us to a really interesting question. How does a team like Dortmund, known for its attacking style, find that balance between keeping its identity and adapting?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
It's a challenge for a lot of successful teams.
Yeah.
How do you evolve without losing what made you great in the first place?
Yeah, it's tough. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right. You got to find that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Keep your strengths, but add some new things, too.
Right.
And that takes a deep understanding of who your team is
Right.
and how the game is changing. You got to be willing to experiment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the articles we have is from a German football magazine.
Okay.
And it argues that Dortmund needs to get a more defensive midfielder.
Interesting.
Someone to protect those attacking fullbacks and be stronger against teams that use a double pivot.
Makes sense. Dortmund's fullbacks are key to their attack.
Right.
But they can leave the team exposed at the back.
Especially against teams that attack out wide.
Exactly. It's a trade-off. You want that attacking threat.
Right.
But you need balance in the midfield.
Yeah, so maybe Dortmund needs to be a bit more careful against certain teams.
Right. Maybe not so gung-ho and attack. Prioritize staying solid defensively.
Yeah.
Maybe change the formation. Tell the fullbacks to stay back more.
Right.
Or even use a more defensive player in midfield.
So Dortmund has some decisions to make.
They do. But let's not forget about Mainz.
Right.
They were the underdogs.
Yeah.
But they showed they're capable of more than just grinding out results.
Yeah, their performance was impressive. They were so disciplined with their pressing, and those counterattacks were clinical.
They were. They're a well-coached team.
Yeah.
And they're hungry for success. This win could be a turning point for them.
Yeah, maybe they're ready to challenge the top teams in the Bundesliga.
Maybe. What's really interesting is that they did all of this while sticking to their style.
They didn't try to play like Dortmund.
Yeah, they played their own game.
Used their strengths.
Right.
And took advantage of Dortmund's weaknesses.
It's not always about copying the bigger teams.
Right.
You need to know what you're good at.
Yeah.
Find your opponent's weak spots.
Yeah.
And make a plan that works for you.
So for you, the listener, what can we learn from this tactical deep dive?
Yeah.
What can we take away, even if we're not football experts?
Well, I think there are a few key things. First, preparation is crucial.
Okay.
Mainz clearly did their research on Dortmund.
Yeah.
They knew their tactics. They knew their weaknesses.
Right.
And they made a plan to exploit them.
Failing to prepare is preparing to fail.
Exactly. And that applies to everything.
Right.
Whether it's a football match or a business meeting
Right.
or even a job interview. Being prepared gives you a big advantage.
What else?
Adaptability. Things don't always go to plan.
Right.
Dortmund got that red card and they couldn't adapt.
Yep.
And that cost them the game.
So you got to be able to change your strategy.
Yes. Think creatively. Find solutions under pressure.
Life throws you curveballs.
It does. And the people who can adapt and improvise,
Yeah.
they're the ones who succeed.
What's the third thing?
Execution. You can have a great plan,
Yeah.
but you have to execute it well.
Right.
Mainz were disciplined, they stayed focused, they took their chances.
Yeah, they didn't let the pressure get to them.
Nope, they stuck to the plan.
Okay, so preparation, adaptability, and execution.
The 3 keys to success, on and off the pitch.
And that's why this Mainz victory is so interesting.
It really is. It shows that even the underdog
Yeah.
can win if they're smart and disciplined and can adapt.
This has been a fantastic deep dive. We went from a Bundesliga match to life lessons.
It has. It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
Likewise.
And with our listener.
Absolutely.
Until next time, remember, keep exploring, keep learning,
Yeah.
and never underestimate a good plan.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you on the next deep dive.